Hello and welcome to Dialogue. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Soviet Union's Great Patriotic War, the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression, and World War II. 80 years on, how should all nations do to uphold the outcomes of World War II and advocate for an accurate historical view of the war? How can China and Russia jointly defend the international political and economic order? And how important is cooperation between the two countries as they navigate increasing trade, protectionism, and hegemony in the world? To answer these questions and more, in the first half of the show, I'll be happy to be joined by Timothy Boltchev, Program Director of the WWII Club and the Research Supervisor of the Central Research Institute of Higher School of Economics. In the second half, I'll be joined by Anton Tsatsinovsky, Director for International Cooperation and Development of the Russian Export Center. That's our topic. I'm Xu Qinduo. Welcome to the show, Timothy. And so we are marking the 80th anniversary of those victories against the fascists like 80 years ago. Looking back from today's view, today's international order, how are they related to today?
Well, actually, the conclusion of the military events of 80 years ago of the war against global fascism made the world as we know it now, and made international institutions as we know them now, and put Russia and China to the positions which allows them to influence for the better the international system. So this is why actually these events still have a fantastic value for all the world, for China, for Russia. And that's why we still look at these events as a certain very confident departure point from which we can develop our approaches to the future of international order.
In what way can China and Russia and other nations, of course, working together to uphold today's international order? Because we ask the question because there is concern, obviously, we see development that's eroding probably the existing international order.
Well, the main problem of today's international order is that there is a group of the states which for more than 500 years enjoyed a very privileged position. And this group of the events, of the states, the United States and the Europeans, they have seen any sort of the international order, international settlement or international institutions as the way to preserve or to strengthen their dominant power. Now, the course of history cannot be stopped. And the global processes go in the way which will make which already makes the world more democratic. There are, of course, the forces who resisted, and there are powers like China and Russia who promote the positive change in the international order. I do not think that the global order is collapsing. I think it is changing. It cannot collapse because thanks to the military circumstances, we cannot have and we will not have another global war like one which has happened 80 years ago. So the business of the nations is and the business of China and Russia, first of all, is to help the international community avoiding the casual risks, the risks which emerge from everyday diplomatic conversation between us and the West, and develop approaches to the reformation of this order, to the reformation of international institutions. So this is, in my view, what is going on and what is our position, the positions of China and position of Russia today. But once again, I would like to stress that any change does not alter what has happened 80 years ago. Any change does not mean a fundamental revision of the outcomes of the Second World War, the war against global fascism.
President Putin had said on many occasions that the relationship between China and Russia has reached a, quote, unprecedented level as a result of the high level of mutual trust between the two countries. But what can we do to further enhance such ties?
Trust is not something which is just only about chemistry. Trust is about the objective national interests. China and Russia are very lucky to be in a position when the developmental interests of both countries do not confront each other, but get together, but complement each other. This is the most important thing. We know that, for example, in the United States, many people consider China as an obstacle for America to resolve their own internal problems. This is a wrong approach, but they believe in it and they put it in the center of their diplomacy. Not in our case. We know for sure that developmental goals of China and developmental goals of Russia are complementary, full stop. And this is the basis of trust. And this is what allows our leaders to maintain this trust and to maintain the dialogue and to improve the relations on a daily basis, being absolutely sure that they do defend the interests of their own countries. Because for every leader, the most important thing is to defend the interest of his country.
Yes.
So they are doing this, but because of the nature of our relationships, it helps them to move forward. It helps them to improve on a daily basis, and it helps us to approach the challenges in a way which is never confrontational. It helps us to approach the challenges in a way for which not a zero-sum game, but a cooperation is in the heart of our approach. We have many things which are related to the global turbulences and which can be considered by the observers as the tactical obstacles for the different sectors of the relationships. But the thing is that we do know that we approach them in a cooperative way, and that means that sooner or later we always do find a solution.
In your recent article, you talked about, the title is attractive. You said that the West is breaking up. Here is what Russia and China must do. So you talked about the resilience of this economic relationship between Russia and China. So this resilience beaten back attempts by the West, in particular the US, to isolate China and Russia, and also to break this relationship where they want to drive a wedge between China and Russia. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, I think that any discussion about the America putting a division between China and Russia, every discussion about this is absolutely useless waste of time. It is impossible. Because the relationships between China and Russia have never been defined by their relationships with the United States. They have always been defined by the national interests and the internal developments of our country. We need to understand it. And we understand, as we have discussed already, that today's internal developments of our country is supportive to the strengthening of our relationships. So this is first. The second, the approach to the global affairs and the developments on the global level encourage this cooperation. And they open the new opportunities, and they help us to deal with the challenges which emerge, with the challenges of our bilateral economic relationships as well. So, in other words, we need to always have markets open in order to direct the goods to the different directions in case we need that, in case the other partner cannot accept all the goods because of its internal economic conditions.
Mm-hmm. Will they succeed? Of course, they try to isolate both China and Russia, given the size of the two countries.
Well, of course, some people can say that they did not believe in what they are doing. But I think that most unfortunately, a certain generation of policymakers in the United States believed that they can do it. Now they have internal change. We don't know the ends of this change. These attempts to isolate from, academically, have been absolutely useless from the very beginning. It was clear that you cannot isolate such the permanent members of United Nations Security Council, because this is not just a title. This is not just about the formal status. This is a confirmation of the place which country occupies in international politics and economics. This is a place this is their identification of the responsibility of the country. And this is identification of the capacities of the country. We remember when the special military operation in Ukraine started more than 3 years ago, the Western states believed that they can politically isolate Russia. It didn't happen from the very beginning. Only very limited number of the allies of the United States and Europeans joined these isolation efforts. For example, in Asia, only 2 countries supported this isolation, but there are American troops on the territories of both countries.
Right.
Unfortunately, the independence, the sovereignty...
Japan and South Korea.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, the sovereignty of Japan and South Korea is not a full sovereignty, because they have foreign troops on their territory on the permanent basis, as well as Germany has. So, for example, in Asia, only these 2 countries joined this isolation effort. And the same when we come to the economic relationships with China. Nobody wants to break these relationships. Even the closest allies of the Americans, Europeans, they don't want it.
Right. You also noticed that this, in your article, the internal division of the Western countries. We do see that, in some countries, in the Western phrase, they call it like the rise of the right wing, or probably a typical case of the United States. What's your observation, and what's the implications for the Western countries and for the world?
Well, it produces some risks, of course. Because when a certain country is in internal trouble, it can adapt more risky behavior. And this is why, of course, for both China and Russia, the internal developments in the US and in Europe are important. Because we take care about our own future. We take care about the future of the global south and the rest of the world. That's why we should watch carefully what is happening there. That is why we should adopt very, very careful and very intellectual diplomacy. We should not go so much straight forward. We indicate our values, we indicate our interests, but we are not saying that no more relations, no more relations. We are open for the dialogue. We are open for the dialogue, and the source of the internal division in the West is actually that they cannot find a clue for their future position in world affairs. For so many centuries, they enjoyed a central role. Now they face a challenge. It cannot be continued. And they are in the process of adapting themselves from the different positions. America is from the position of the big island and behaving like an island. Europe is from the position of from the very vulnerable position, because the dependence on America is very high, but at the same time, many businesses in Europe want to continue cooperation with China, and Russia, for example, do not want to isolate themselves. So that is why I think that the internal developments in the West are both risky, but at the same time give some opportunities.
Well, in the end, of course, with these internal divisions in the Western states, and of course even between Europeans and the US, and the rise of the global South, strong relations between China and Russia, people in particular, the rest of the world would ask what kind of a world China and Russia want to see, international order, in this sense?
We want to see the world where no zero-sum game will be dominant in the international affairs. We want to see the world where cooperation will be, instead of zero-sum game, will be the dominant way of interaction between the states. And I think that already now China and Russia approach this, approach the construction of this world with a full understanding of what they want. Well, let us take the example of this new, very popular artificial intellect market. What Americans don't want to speak about the international regulation of this. China and Russia are of the different positions. China and Russia believe that we need to introduce international regulations of artificial intellect industry. Though China has a fantastic achievements. Even if China would have been like America, they would have been ignoring the rest of international community, but China does not. China is open for cooperation, and the same as Russia. So we already demonstrate that our behavior supports cooperative world, not a zero-sum game world.
Mm-hmm. A world of cooperation.
A world of cooperation, absolutely.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Joining me in this part is Anton Sosnovsky, Director for International Cooperation and Development of the Russian Export Center. Welcome to Dialogue, Anton. Why don't we start with introduction of your center, International Cooperation and Development, the Russian Export Center?
It's my pleasure to be here with you today. So the Russian Export Center actually is the group of companies we do have in the framework of Russian Export Center, along with the center itself, bank that is called Russian Export-Import Bank. And so we are able to provide funding for export contracts, for instance. Along with it, we do have an insurance company. It's called XR. It's like a vis-a-vis to Sinasure in China. So we do provide for insurance for export operations and export projects. Along with it, we do attract attention, and we include in our group of companies School of Experts. It's a special division of Russian Export Center that do provide facilities to grow expertise for companies that would like to improve this expertise or to possess this expertise. I'm saying about companies that are at the stage of starting their export.
Mm-hmm. Please walk us through this evolvement of Russian trade, surrounding, of course, the commercial restrictions imposed by Washington and the European countries. How is it like, the whole process?
Yeah, so starting for somewhere 3 years from nowadays, there was a huge task for our exporters to reorient their sales from markets of EU or the United States to other destinations. And let me know that nowadays this process is already behind us. And the main task that we see for today is to stabilize those export plans. Traditionally, the main target markets for Russian export was the CIS, Commonwealth of Independent States. It's our close neighbors. Along with it, we do see growing trade and growing potential at the same time for the trade with our partners in Asia-Pacific region, in Middle East, that's set in many countries. And of course, we do see a great unrevealed potential in Africa.
It's a country with rich resources, mineral resources, energy, oil and gas, for example. I mean, how important is trade to the economy of Russia, to the GDP growth, for example?
If I may use this strong word, it's crucial. And of course, that covers wide range of issues that stand behind this word. Of course, the exports of natural resources, mainly oil and gas, is still account for the significant part of budget revenue of the Russian Federation. Along with it, recently, non-primary, non-energy exports have been grown significantly. And we at the Russian Export Center actually directly deals with this non-energy experts. We do cover only this kind of support provided for our exporters. We do estimate that these efforts that we undertaken during last 10 years, and actually this year is the anniversary for Russian Export Center, resulted in sufficient, let me say, brilliant results. We do see a great rise in exports of such products like machineries, of course, of processed agricultural products. I think our friends in China do value greatly our confectionery, for instance, and it's widely known, some of traditional Russian brands, for example. However, due to sanctions, we do estimate some kind of lack of capacity in some transport corridors. And the second portion, of course, covers the settlement of payments for, transboundary settlement of payments for this export and, of course, import operations. That's the cases that shall be worked on further on.
And then let's focus on the China-Russia trade. We know that last year, 2024, witnessed this record for nearly $245 billion in terms of the volume of total trade. I still remember, a few years back when the two governments talked about having their goal like $100 billion or $200 billion, and now it's like 245 ahead of schedule there. Very impressive. So how do you characterize this, the relationship in terms of trade between China and Russia?
I think that the first point that really worth noting is that this is not just the figures, this is the result of systematic work that reveals this mutual potential of trade. And of course, this work appears as the one that of mutual interest. For example, along with this traditional supplies, again, oil, gas, or crude aluminum, we do see a great rise in exports of agricultural products, both for basic and for processed one. And actually, this resulted in entering Russia in top 10 suppliers to China of agricultural products. And we do understand that that's not just, again, a positioning or ranking. We do see a great interest of consumers in China for our high-quality organic and ecological supplies of agricultural products. Along with it, we are not stopping on only of these two major portions like agricultural ones and energetic supplies. We do see a growing interest for the supplies from Russia for FMCG products, namely. And actually, nowadays, such a format of supply as e-commerce is widely used. And we measure this growing interest through our national market. It's called Made in Russia, again, that is located in the major platforms that operate in China. So we do attract our attention to make these high-quality products be affordable on one side, and that is quite an easy task for the consumers to buy them.
This is a question I'm going to ask you. Like, what are the popular or the populist, probably Chinese products in the Russian market?
Nowadays, we see that's actually the important point, that our trade grows in both directions, both for exports and imports. And last year's the growth of import from China accounted for 4%, and nowadays it's more than $115 billion. And we see such kind of balance along with such talks that's happening nowadays in some other jurisdictions.
Trade surplus.
Yeah. And if we see see it in a bit more breakdown, then we truly notice that, for example, equipment and mechanical devices increased by 8% to more than 27 billion. It's quite a huge figures. If we're talking about vehicle exports, the increase was around 13% to 25.5 billion of US dollars, with passenger cars exports increasing by more than 30% and stands for 15.2 billion of US dollars. And that's actually resulted in a growing portion of passenger vehicles market of Russia, and nowadays more than half of all new cars that are sold in Russia are from China. And the same situation for smartphones, for example. That actually clearly shows that consumers in Russia do love such a high quality products for affordable prices, and we do see sufficient efforts undertaken by the suppliers from China in order to get these products closer to consumers, both for the offline market and on the marketplaces online.
Well, earlier you mentioned a little bit about the challenges probably in terms of trade between the two countries. What more can be done to smooth out those challenges or to increase trade between the two countries?
There are two major portions of such an obstacles. First one is logistics, and we do need to work together concerning some solutions that might be truly workable in order to reduce the costs of logistics. Along with it, we do see the necessity to discuss and to elaborate on mutually acceptable solutions for such an important issue as the supplementary documents and for transferring of customs formalities into electronic form, for example, because this will reduce both issues, I mean the time and of course
yes.
the costs.
Yeah, efficiency.
Efficiency in two dimensions. Yeah,
right.
The second issue, of course, is the money transfer. We see the efforts that are undertaken both by Russian authorities and authorities of China. Along with it, our commercial sectors, they are let's say the most recipient for such a decisions because they are willing to have it. It's of course the transferring of our settlement for external trade into national currencies. And we do understand that there shall be additional efforts undertaken in order to develop the mechanics how to settle how to execute the settlement in national currencies, and we do estimate that the utilization, the wider utilization of national platforms like Mir in Russia and UnionPay in China shall be utilized, and we do understand that this is the option how to avoid possible negative impact from some unfair decisions undertaken by Western countries in order to limit our trade and our trade and economic cooperation on the broader understanding.
Thank you, Anton. Thank you for speaking with us.
Pleasure.